Have you ever, found yourself standing in the middle of a totally unfamiliar city just staring up at a transit map?
Oh yeah, the classic tourist stare.
Right, and instead of looking like a helpful guide, it just looks like, I don't know, the tangled circuit board of some massive megalopolis.
It is a universally humbling experience, honestly.
Exactly. You're surrounded by thousands of people moving with this terrifying sense of absolute purpose, and you suddenly realize you don't even have the vocabulary to ask, which side of the platform you're supposed to be standing on.
Yeah, you could have a PhD, you could be the CEO of a huge company, but in that moment, all your standard intelligence just sort of evaporates
It totally does.
because you lack that specific functional language required to operate within that particular system.
It feels like you've been dropped into a simulation and you just, well, you somehow forgot to unlock the basic movement controls.
That is a great way to put it.
Well, today, that is exactly what we are focusing on for you in this deep dive. We're looking at this educational transcript titled English for Commuters, Weekend Plans, and Public Transport.
Right, and it centers around this conversation between two characters, Daniel and Emma, as they basically map out their respective schedules.
Yeah, and if you just glance at it, it reads like a pretty standard language learning tool. It's practical, it's structured, and it gives you the baseline words to get from point A to point B.
But it's actually doing a lot more than that.
Exactly. Our mission for this deep dive is to look way beneath that surface. We aren't here to just, read off a list of vocabulary words today.
No, definitely not.
We are decoding how simple, highly structured language actually acts as a blueprint for human mobility. We're going to explore how mastering this specific linguistic architecture actively reduces your cognitive load, lowers travel anxiety, and honestly, literally unlocks the world around you.
Because language in this context isn't just a descriptive tool, to talk about your commute. It is the invisible infrastructure that makes the commute possible in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the architecture of a plan.
Right, before we step on a train.
Exactly. Before we even think about stepping onto a train or swiping a transit card, we have to know where we are actually going. And what I found so compelling about the source material is how it subtly contrasts two very different types of movement.
You're talking about point-to-point transit versus exploratory transit?
Yes, exactly. It draws this really sharp line between intention and routine, and interestingly, it does it entirely through grammar.
Yeah, let's look at Emma's Sunday, for instance.
Right, she isn't just wandering aimlessly. She has this highly specific, curated plan.
She wants to go to a small street market.
And she is strategically timing her departure for 9 a.m., specifically to avoid the massive crowds that she knows will hit by 11 a.m.
Which is very smart, by the way.
Oh, totally. She wants strawberries, she wants bread, maybe some small flowers, and then a walk in the park if the weather holds. It's an exploratory mission, but it's guided by intent.
And contrast that with Daniel's Saturday.
Right.
His day is just a masterclass in point-to-point transit. He wakes up at 8 a.m., has a simple breakfast of eggs and toast, and then he executes this multi-stage travel plan.
A 15-minute walk, a 40-minute train ride, and then another 10-minute walk.
All just to have lunch at a specific restaurant near his brother's house?
Yeah?
It's highly structured.
It is.
But the real insight here is how the source uses grammar to differentiate these active weekend adventures from the passive Monday to Friday grind.
Right, because for the weekend plans, we see the phrase going to. Like, I am going to visit my brother, or I am going to buy strawberries.
Exactly. It indicates a planned action. It requires, forethought and conscious decision-making.
Yeah.
But when the conversation shifts to daily commuting, the grammar shifts to the simple present tense. I take the bus. He takes the train. Notice the mechanical addition of the S for third person singular.
Right, the S in takes.
Yeah, it implies permanence, repetition, routine. It's a fixed reality. It essentially suggests that during the work week, your brain is operating on this passive autopilot.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on that a little bit.
Sure.
You use the word passive like it's a bad thing, but isn't that autopilot an essential survival mechanism?
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. If I had to consciously process every single step of my Tuesday morning commute, if I had to actively plan my route to the office the way Daniel plans his multi-leg weekend journey, I would be cognitively exhausted before I even got to my desk.
That is a completely fair challenge. And you are actually hitting on something transit psychologists study extensively.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called cognitive offloading. You're right, the simple present tense, the I take the bus, isn't just a sign of being passive. It's a sign of a highly optimized routine.
Ah.
By turning the commute into muscle memory, You preserve your mental energy for the tasks that actually matter when you arrive at your destination.
It's like having a macro programmed on your computer. You just hit one button, like go to work, and your body executes the script.
Exactly.
But on the weekend, using going to is like plugging a brand new specific destination into your GPS. You are consciously mapping a novel route.
And when you tell yourself, I'm going to go to the market, you are actively taking control of your time, pulling yourself out of that optimized low-energy mode that dominates the week. The language literally shapes your mindset.
It's fascinating, but regardless of whether you are in exploratory mode or point-to-point autopilot, you still have to navigate the physical system.
Right, the physical tools required and the highly localized language needed to use them.
Yeah, because once that intention is set, we require a very specific set of tools. Daniel and Emma have very different approaches here.
They do. Emma relies on the bus for her daily 20-minute ride.
Buses are great for micromobility, right? They stop right near residential homes.
Exactly. But Daniel relies on the train, which is built for macromobility. It's faster, but it only stops at major centralized hubs.
And navigating either of these requires words that might seem incredibly basic to a native speaker, but they're actually foundational concepts of urban design.
Like knowing the difference between a stop and a station.
Yes. A stop is a small node in a micronetwork, and a station is a major hub in a macronetwork.
Or knowing where to physically place your body. You need to know you wait on a platform, which beginners sometimes call a track.
Right. And you need to know how to verify if you are on line 1 or line 2, so
Yeah.
you don't end up moving in the exact wrong geographic direction.
And of course, there's the money, paying the fare, the economics of movement.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. Our source details the difference between buying a one-way ticket versus a return ticket.
Right, basic transit vocabulary.
But this is where the reality of transit gets tricky. Because language isn't universal, it adapts to the physical environment you are in. If you walk up to a ticket booth in Chicago or New York and ask for a return ticket, the clerk is going to look at you like you have two heads.
Oh, definitely. What's fascinating here is how language must be adaptable. Because in those specific localized dialects, the phrase is round trip. The source actually includes that alternative phrase.
Right, return versus round trip.
What we are seeing here is that while the underlying human need getting to a destination and coming back is identical everywhere in the world, the linguistic key required to unlock that action changes based on your geography.
A return ticket in London is a round trip ticket in Chicago.
Exactly. It proves that you can't just memorize a textbook and expect to navigate a city flawlessly. You have to actively listen to the environment around you.
And listening is actually a perfect transition to one of the most fascinating aspects of this source material. It goes out of its way to provide specific pronunciation tips.
Which is something we rarely analyze.
Right. For example, it notes that the word schedule can be pronounced schedule or schedule, depending on where you are. But more importantly, it emphasizes that ticket is pronounced ticket, not ticket. Ticket. Right. Why the focus on that sharp, aggressive first syllable?
It comes down to something we might call acoustic survival.
Acoustic survival.
Yeah, think about the acoustic environment of a major transit hub. What does it sound like?
It's basically a wall of low-frequency noise. The rumble of the trains, the hum of the massive ventilation systems, the echoing footsteps of thousands of people.
Precisely. It is a hostile acoustic environment heavily weighted toward low frequencies. If you walk up to an information desk and ask a question using soft vowels or rounded syllables, your voice will literally be swallowed by the ambient noise of the station.
Oh, wow.
You need sharp percussive consonants like the hard T and K in TCAT
Yeah.
to physically cut through that specific low-frequency background hum.
Oh, that is incredible.
The pronunciation isn't just about sounding correct, you know. It's about ensuring your words have the acoustic physics necessary to be heard in a chaotic environment.
I never thought about pronunciation as an acoustic weapon before. You need those sharp consonants just to interact with the system.
Exactly.
And speaking of interacting with the system, think about how we pay those fares today. The physical mechanics of the commute have completely changed.
The shift away from cash.
Yeah, the text highlights this shift toward travel cards to save time. It introduces this daily choreography of having to tap in at the gate when you enter and tap out when you leave.
It demands continuous physical participation from the commuter.
Yes, and for those of you listening, think about the last time you tapped your card at a turnstile. You probably didn't even look at your hand. It's pure physical memory.
Oh, totally.
But the stakes of that muscle memory are real. If you lose focus and forget to tap out, the system automatically penalizes you with a higher fare. It is an infrastructure that actively punishes you for dropping out of your routine.
Because highly structured systems require complete adherence to function.
Which is exactly the problem. Rigid plans and highly tuned routines are fantastic when everything runs perfectly.
Right.
But the more tightly wound your schedule is, the more brittle it becomes. And when these massive, intricate transit systems inevitably break down, your perfectly optimized autopilot commute shatters completely.
And suddenly you are thrust back into an environment that requires intense cognitive load.
The source gets deeply into these environmental disruptions. Weather is the great equalizer.
Oh, rain.
Rainy days make traffic heavy, cars slow down, buses get delayed, meaning you have to retroactively adjust your departure time. You have to leave earlier.
And Emma brings up a sensory detail that is just, well, it's wonderfully miserable.
Yeah.
The hazard of dripping wet umbrellas on a packed public transport vehicle?
Ugh, yes. It's a detail that instantly transports you to a humid, crowded Tuesday morning. That physical discomfort heavily exacerbates the psychological stress of delay itself.
But a delay is one thing. The ultimate disruption is a total system failure.
Right, the canceled train.
Yeah, Emma recounts a scenario where she was stranded at a station and the digital screen above her simply read one binary word, canceled.
The absolute collapse of the macro network.
Right, and what she did next is brilliant. She found a staff member, and she used what I think is the most crucial string of words in the entire source material.
Let me guess. Excuse me. This train is canceled. What can I do?
Yes. If you analyze that, it is a masterclass in crisis communication.
It really is. Isn't it fascinating that the most important phrases we learn aren't for when things go right, but for when the system completely breaks down?
Absolutely. Problem solving in a stressful environment relies entirely on the clarity and simplicity of your verbs.
It's like a transit emergency room.
Mm.
First, she establishes politeness to de-escalate the stress with, excuse me. Then, she states the objective reality of the broken system this train is canceled. And then, she immediately transfers the cognitive burden of problem solving onto the authority figure, what can I do? And it yields immediate options, right? Like, take the next train or take bus number 12.
And it is highly effective because it relies on clarity. When you are operating in a state of high stress, your linguistic toolkit actually needs to shrink. And the source perfectly illustrates this by highlighting a very specific set of grammar for these moments irregular past tense verbs.
Right. Go becomes went. Take becomes took. Buy becomes bought. Get becomes got.
Exactly. We could think of this as the language of triage. When you are lost in a maze-like station asking for exit A or the ticket office, or you've missed your stop, or your transit card has a low balance and you are blocking the turnstile.
You don't have the luxury of using complex future conditional tenses. You don't say, if I had known the train was arriving early, I would have boarded.
No, you have to communicate what just broke instantly so you can fix it. I took the wrong train. I got off at the wrong stop. I bought the wrong ticket.
It is rapid-fire communication designed purely to correct an error in the system.
Exactly.
And there are so many potential errors to correct. The text walks through the panic of realizing your card is empty, which requires you to navigate the specific local phrasing of top up, or add money, or recharge.
Or the absolute fury of missing a stop, which means you have to physically get off, navigate down under the tracks to the opposite platform, and go backwards to undo your mistake.
And when a screen flashes delayed, what do commuters do?
They wait, they read, or they stare at their phones.
They retreat into their own personal, digitized bubbles to manage the ambient anxiety of the unknown.
Which brings us to the final layer of this entire ecosystem.
Right. Because let's say you survive the delay, you navigate the triage, and you finally get onto the vehicle. Surviving the commute isn't just about knowing the right words for the machine. It's about understanding the unspoken social contracts of shared spaces.
The behavioral mechanics of the micro-community.
That's a great way to frame it. A crowded train is basically a temporary micro-community. For 40 minutes, you and 200 complete strangers are locked in a moving box. We all have to play our part to keep that delicate ecosystem functioning without descending into total chaos.
And the source is very explicit about how we do this. Emma points out that in the mornings, on commutes, people are universally tired.
Right.
It is an unwritten rule that it's important to be quiet and polite. She wears headphones specifically for that reason.
And wearing those headphones isn't just about listening to music, it is a physical signal. It is an acknowledgement of the shared exhaustion of the morning routine.
You are actively participating in preserving the collective peace of the microcommunity.
And when it comes to the physical movement of the crowd, politeness actually functions as a necessary mechanism. The text outlines the strategy for navigating crowds. Like on weekends, trains near tourist places get packed.
So what's the strat?
You stand near the door but not too close. You hold the rail for safety, and fundamentally, always let people get off the train first before you try to get on. Now, people often frame this as just being nice, but it's not just a social contract, is it?
No, it is basic fluid dynamic.
Less. Think of the train car like a pneumatic tube. You physically cannot force new volume into the tube until you allow the existing volume to exit.
If the people entering block the people exiting, the pressure builds and the entire system seizes up.
Politeness isn't just good manners, it is the lubricant that keeps the machine running.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, language is the tool we use to apply that lubricant. When you inevitably have to move through a solid wall of human beings, the phrase, "excuse me," becomes essential.
It is the verbal equivalent of a turn signal. It allows you to pass someone safely without triggering a defensive reaction and prevents friction in these tightly packed spaces.
Or polite interactions like asking, "Is this seat taken?" It prevents the awkwardness of just hovering over a stranger, and the required responses are equally efficient. "No, it's free," or "Yes, sorry."
No one wants a long conversation. It is a rapid, frictionless exchange of social data.
This etiquette also extends to interacting with the drivers. The text teaches phrases like, "Where do I get off for Central Park?" Or, "Does this bus stop at Pine Street?" Which, requires a certain level of confidence to speak up in a quiet vehicle.
True. But beyond politeness, this communication ties directly into personal safety, especially regarding nighttime travel.
Right. When going out at night, the infrastructure of a city shifts dramatically.
Exactly. The rules change. Buses often stop running at midnight, which sometimes requires you to take a taxi instead. The text heavily emphasizes that commuters must always check the time for the last train.
The final train of the night. Missing it isn't just an annoyance, it creates a profound vulnerability.
You're stranded.
Right. Therefore, knowing how to safely plan your ride home, checking that last train schedule, isn't just a scheduling inquiry. It is the vital anchor of your entire evening.
You literally map your entire night out backward from that specific departure time. Everything you do hinges on that single piece of information.
Which perfectly brings us full circle. Whether you are charting an exploratory Sunday morning trip to a street market, or you are carefully timing your exit from a party to catch the last train home on a Saturday night, the language you use gives you the agency to control your trajectory through the city.
So let's synthesize what we've unpacked today. Mastering your weekend plans and your daily commute really boils down to 3 distinct pillars.
Okay, lay them out.
First, utilizing clear grammar like simple sentences to establish intent and pull yourself out of weekday autopilot when necessary. Second, preparing for delays by mastering the language of triage, those irregular past tense verbs so you can rapidly problem solve when the infrastructure breaks down. And third, maintaining politeness, not just to be nice, but as the essential social lubricant that prevents our tightly packed urban environments from grinding to a halt.
The ultimate takeaway from analyzing Daniel and Emma is that short, clear English is always best. In the chaotic environment of public transit, highly functional communication is your greatest asset.
And this brings us back to you, listening right now. Consider how you navigate your own weekends. Do you rely on buses, trains, subways, or just walking?
Do you use apps for real-time information, or do you just hope for the best?
Yeah, how much of your movement is dictated by the point-to-point simple present tense of an autopilot routine, and how often do you allow yourself the exploratory freedom of going to a new destination?
It is entirely worth analyzing your own routines to see where you might be operating efficiently, but perhaps a bit too passively.
Completely agree. And before we close out this deep dive, I want to turn it over to our expert for one final provocative thought to leave you with today. Something to mull over.
Yeah, so as we reviewed the source material, an interesting question arose. The text treats public transit purely as a means to get to a destination, like a market or a brother's house. It is framed as an obstacle to overcome. But what if we reframed the commute itself? Instead of viewing that 20-minute bus ride or that 40-minute train trip as dead time between activities, what if it is actually the most vibrant, concentrated cross-section of a city's culture that you will experience all week?
Oh, wow.
Next time you tap in at the gate, take a moment. Really look at the living map of the city moving around you. Look at the thousands of distinct intentions intersecting in real time.
Because maybe you aren't just a passive dot moving along a tangled circuit board. Maybe, just by knowing the language, actively navigating the space, and applying that social lubricant, you're actually a vital, active participant.